Looks like we're live.
It does look like we're live, doesn't it?
It does.
Todd, what are we doing here, man? This, you know what, for the listeners out there, it's probably weird because, or now the watchers, because normally we're on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
This is a little different, man.
Yeah. So this is Craft Brewed Agile. What we thought of, and we were talking about actually at a craft brewery, Ryan and I, is that we'd create a YouTube channel sampling some of our local craft beers and have some fun conversations about agility. And so that's what we're going to do today for the first time, episode 1, Craft Brewed Agile.
So I think we've got some ground rules here. So first of all, we have to show up with a beer, right?
Yeah.
We have to show up with some kind of beer that we like. Craft brewed, though, it cannot be a mass-produced beer. And so I'm rocking Off the Square Brewing. They're in Crown Point, Indiana, and it is their off Square 65 South Pilsner. So I'm going to pour myself a glass of that. I'm a big fan of Pilsners. We're going to see how this goes, but Off the Square is usually pretty amazing. And I'm going to rock that. Todd, what are you going to drink?
Yeah, so one of my favorite locals is a brewing company called South County. They're in Fawn Grove, Pennsylvania, and I just happened to run across some Cosmic Nod, which is a 5% pale ale. It's delicious. It's great for any time of year. They got some pretty sweet labels, and that's what I am going to be rocking today.
Yeah, so for the beer nuts out there, this is an ABV of 5%, an IBU of 20. And it actually, like, this thing looks pretty clean, pretty crisp. I think I'm going to enjoy this.
So I can't give all those stats that you just gave there, Ryan. Mine's 5%, and you can see this is a nice, hard to see through pale ale, which is exactly how I like them.
Very cool. All right, man. So while we're drinking, the whole point is not just to drink beer, yeah. Although just hanging out with you 30 minutes with a beer would be fine, Todd. But what are we doing?
Yeah. So one of the things that we thought we would do is start out with a little bit of fun, right? So this week's question, and Ryan, I'm really curious to see what your answer is. What is the most evil fictional product owner that you can think of?
Oh, man. So the most evil fictional product. So I've been racking my brain on this. I've been trying, but I decided I'm instantly going back to childhood here. I'm thinking, for me growing up, the most evil product owner that was around was Cobra Commander.
Yes.
You remember Cobra Commander?
I do. I absolutely remember Cobra Commander.
The old G.I. Joe cartoon. I mean, that was like a staple. I think every Saturday morning. No, it was actually after school every day, I think. And we'd have to sit down and watch it. It seemed like Cobra Commander was always trying to take over the world. He always had these dastardly plans. He could never quite pull it off. But it was like the evil laugh. I think the mask also like helped add to the scariness of him as a product owner. But if you think about it, he was actually a horrible product owner, right? He could never quite work with his team effectively. It seems like his troops were always getting beat. He never quite gave them all the tools they needed. And it seems like his plans were just kind of half-baked, and he never could quite succeed in taking over the world. And I think that was, he not only is he an evil product owner, he's a pretty disappointing one as well.
Yeah, I guess on that topic too, you could say a lot of the people underneath that product, or if you want to use the term underneath, they operated by fear a lot, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. He was always, it was never like a collaborative arrangement. He was always yelling, physically abusive, shrieky. I mean, yeah, he's definitely not a partner to his team. He was definitely more of a, let's lead through fear. I agree. Yeah.
Cobra Commander. Yeah, I like it. That's a good one.
Hey, I mean, I think it's a good poll. I miss the old school cartoons. I don't understand the new ones.
Me and neither do I. So, do you want to hear mine?
Who did you land on?
I thought about this for a long time. And when I say long time, like 2 days. I'm going to go with Star Wars, and I'm going to go with Palpatine. Right.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. When I'm thinking of Palpatine is I'm thinking of the Death Star, right? A product, and thinking about Palpatine and what a clear evil vision Palpatine has, right? To be able to rule the universe, and same kind of things I'm hearing, about Cobra Commander, that by fear, right? How many people did what he wanted out of fear, from the engineering side of the house to, stormtroopers or whatever. So I'm rolling with Palpatine. What do you think about that?
I think Palpatine's a pretty bad product owner too. He had some longevity. He definitely managed to survive more things than he should have. Probably should have been fired a lot sooner. But the Dark Lord of the Sith did manage to hang on to his role far longer than most expected.
Yeah. Well, and so I fact check this. I have some buddies that are really hardcore Star Wars guys. I mean, I'm pretty into Star Wars, but I'm not like down into the details. So anybody watching this, if I am factually incorrect about anything with Star Wars, I'm a surface Star Wars guy, not like own and know every detail of it. But we were talking about how Palpatine has these hardcore managers, like Darth Vader, right? Darth Vader is to go there and put his vision into action with an iron fist, right? Or most recently with the newer movies, Kylo Ren, right? So interesting how that might relate to some environments we've seen and been in before, huh?
I think that's accurate. I think, yeah, his lieutenants, his management team, left a lot to be desired. In fact, both of them ended up turning away from his teachings,
Yeah.
ended up turning back to the light side, and moved on with light. Yeah, maybe they failed a little bit, but in the end, they ended up doing the right thing, just not what the product owner wanted.
It's true. And inevitably kind of turned on him, right? To some extent, really kind of turned on him.
So that's interesting, right? So what if a dev team, so maybe we'll get a little serious, right? It's kind of fun to tee up a question, but maybe this led to kind of a cool topic. Have you ever seen an instance, Todd, where a dev team almost revolted on a product owner, where a dev team basically said, look, we don't think this is the right thing to do. We don't think that this is the right direction. And we're going to change that. We're going to move you in a path that we think's right. And if you don't come with us, we're out.
You asked that question, and one particular example that I can think of is, I was doing some consulting at a place, and a development team really absolutely did not agree with the direction that the product owner was taking it. The product owner presented their product backlog in a sprint planning session, and the development team basically revolted. And they called me, saying Todd's going to, stick up for the development team, and that's going to be that. And we're going to have Todd negotiate. The Scrum Master was fairly new Scrum Master. And really what it came down to is that product owner wasn't evil, like Palpatine, right? But
Right.
really didn't disseminate the information in a way that the development team could understand why what they were working on was valuable. And so the development team expected me to say, yeah, development team rules, they don't agree, so they're not going to do it. And I actually sided with the product owner. I think the product owner had a whole bunch of knowledge from traveling to different client sites that they didn't do a great job of telling the development team. But once the development team understood, they could get behind it. And it was actually kind of a hard lesson for everybody involved. The development team, who quickly found out that, yes, they do serve the product owner. And then the product owner really kind of becoming to understand that they need to get the development teams, on their side and in line with their vision, and understanding what they're doing, and give them the information and some why behind that. Does any of that resonate with you, Ryan?
Yeah, it totally does. And I've seen plenty of instances where dev teams had to jump in and just say, look, there's too much tech debt to do what you're asking for. It's technically impossible. And if we don't change direction here, if we don't make some adjustments, if we don't fix what's happening, we're just building more junk on top of more junk, and this is going to go really bad. And I think we have to be super careful of that. And so why, Scrum Masters, they're listening for those discrepancies in the conversation. They're listening for those disagreements. They're trying to make sure that all those considerations are being heard. And if a dev team and a product owner, if they're just talking right past each other, I mean, that just leads to some really bad situations. So sure, I've never seen a Palpatine show up in a Scrum team. But you know what? We do see quite a bit in our travels, we see product owners who try to assign work. We see product owners who try to create division in dev teams because they're trying to gain influence. We see some of this stuff play out, and I think this is, one of the many reasons why I think a good scrum master is so effective is that, they can see that happening quickly. They can pull their product owner aside and say, "Hey, buddy, we really need to talk about this." But man, if no one's watching that relationship, I think Palpatines and Cobra Commanders can pop up all over the place.
I think you're absolutely right. And so Cobra Commander and Palpatine, obviously, we're using these examples. They had some, like, let's say, evil intentions. I don't think a vast majority of the product owners that end up in that state where they're assigning work and being very dictator-like really intend on being that way.
Right.
I think that oftentimes it's done out of fear. So if you think about the people that the product owner has to talk to all the time, they want to appease and please the customer and come up with new and innovative ideas that they can put into the product backlog based off of those conversations. And they've also got stakeholders breathing down their neck, right? Oftentimes they have stakeholders breathing down their neck. So it's really hard for them to get kind of caught in the middle of that and just forget about the dev team and just shove that stuff down on it because of the stress that they're under. So I don't think that anybody's initially... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you think Palpatine or Cobra Commander reported to a board of directors?
I don't think so. I think they're the sole decision maker.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's paying for everything, right? I mean, it's still someone else's money.
Yeah, that's a good point. But hey, let's take it in that direction, Ryan. So if it is somebody else's money, is a product owner then given the authority, the proper authority to do their job if they don't own that budget?
Yeah, so this is another one we run into, right? That we talk about this in the book quite a bit. Here's a shameless plug. If you haven't read the book yet, Fixing Your Scrum, Practical Solutions for Common Scrum Problems. We definitely cover a lot of these topics and even more. But yeah, if it isn't so we talk about this quite a bit, or we have in the past where if it isn't the product owner's money, that's a problem. And one of the things that we've talked about doing, because we see this a lot, right? We see the proxy product owner, we see the product owner who's unable to actually control the direction of the product. We see not having the budgetary control that we would expect to see. And so one of the things we talk about, or at least I talk about in the classes that I teach, and I know, Todd, you go down this path too, is that, as a Scrum Master, if we've got a product owner who doesn't own the budget, find the person who owns the budget, go camp out in front of their office, visit them every day. Like, stop in and say, "Hey, we just want you to know, since we're spending your money, here's exactly how it's being spent. Here's what we've been up to." And after a few days, you're going to find that this stakeholder, usually a VP of some kind, they say, "Hey, this is all really great information, but I'm super busy. I don't have time to spend every day with you." And our reaction, the Scrum Master and product, you're right. Yeah, we don't want to bother you every day. If you would let us make decisions of 10,000 or less without having to come talk to you, we could probably end up just talking to you once every 2 weeks. How does that sound? And you make this incremental progress, but the implication here is huge. And I know this is a big thing with you too, Todd, that with the Scrum Master role, then if you think through that example cleanly, our primary goal is to get the product owner promoted, right? So can you imagine going home and telling your wife, "Hey, I had a great day today. I got someone else a promotion and more influence and more money." Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So I think that's what's really hard about being a Scrum Master, right? And really, so I would argue too, that we talk so much about how a Scrum Master is a servant leader. And so what you're describing there is servant leadership, putting other people's interests above your own. Don't you think a product owner is a servant leader or should exhibit those same qualities and traits? How come we don't talk about that a lot? How come we don't talk about a product owner as a servant leader?
I totally think we should. Like, I think a product owner, Scrum at its core is a service-based framework. Mm-hmm. And so we expect, the development team works in service to a product owner. The Scrum Master works in service to the product owner, the dev team, and the wider organization. That product owner works in service to the organization and stakeholders and users and customers. So they're serving the customers. Like when a product owner creates a product backlog, they're creating basically a backlog of needs that a customer has. They're creating a backlog of things that would make a person's life better. They're creating a backlog of things that will have an impact on the world. When they order that product backlog, they're ordering it by they're expressing value. They're showing what could be valuable to those people that they're serving by ordering that product backlog in a way that takes all of those people's issues and ideas and accounts to bear. And then we get this order, we get this product backlog. And as a dev team executes on that, they're working in service to a product owner who has hopefully kept, all of the stakeholders and customers and users in mind. I mean, you would expect that, but it may not always play out that way.
Yeah, this is making me think. So as a Scrum Master then, what if I teach my product owner servant leadership or coach or work with them in understanding what servant leadership is and get them to think about serving their customer above all, right? Their service is exclusively to their customer and everything they do is in and for their customer. That's not to say, we just talked a little bit about the development team, the communication there that we need to work with as a Scrum Master and make sure that that is at a good place. But what if think about all the product owners that you've dealt with through time, Ryan, and what if they were servant leaders to their customers and they put their customers above themselves? How do you think that would turn out?
So I think they would show up differently. So right now, and you get this too, I'm sure, where a lot of the product owners come to us and say, "How do we write better user stories?"
Yeah,
and that's
right.
always kind of a bummer. It's a bummer question. Like, look, that's a very minor part of your role, and we spend a lot of time in our book talking about how as a product owner, you are crafting ideas and solutions that make people's lives better. You are there to do all these, but unfortunately it comes down to the story. If we actually got this idea of service injected into the product owner role, I think you would see you'd see product owners spending a lot more time with their customers, with their users, trying to figure out not just how do we keep a dev team busy, how do we build the best product backlog ever. I think that what you would then see is how do we work in a way collectively as a Scrum team, collectively as an organization, that puts the most important things of value to a customer out first, because now we're impact driven. Like we're trying to be more people focused. We're trying to be more outcome based. And I think people would all have to show up differently if they really believe that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely know what you mean. And so it sure sounds like that's a thing that we should work with as a Scrum Master to your product owners, right? I mean, to me, it seems like it. And I can't think of a product owner really that has exclusively taken that stance. Sometimes I think of product owners, and I've seen product owners that are incentivized by something, So oftentimes we talk about as Scrum Masters, we talk about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I see a lot of product owners that are extrinsically motivated to get a good bonus.
Yeah. Or right. Extrinsically motivated to please a particular stakeholder who has additional influence in the organization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Talk to me about that more, Ryan. Because how much does that happen? Right. The person that yells the loudest, that has the biggest budget, is the one that gets what they want. Right. So is your product owner really empowered then if that's happened? If they're an order taker from highly paid stakeholders?
Yeah, it's tough too, right? So I've been in these executive roles where, so as a VP, if you walk in a room, and sometimes it's totally accidental. Like again, it's most people are not Cobra Commander or Emperor Palpatine, right? I think most of the time it's really incidental, accidental things. And I'll give you an example, right? I once walked into a room, and multiple Scrum teams were meeting. Like, so it was one of the coolest retros I'd ever seen, actually. Like, multiple Scrum teams who kind of, we still hadn't quite gotten to truly cross-functional. We still hadn't gotten to truly self-organizing. We were kind of in that middle zone. And so, the many teams who might have had some dependencies on each other were meeting for a group retrospective. And I walked in and I was just like, hey, everybody, I just want to let you know, the last sprint review was amazing. I know you're about to kick off a retro. I'll get out of here because I know I shouldn't be here, but just want to make sure you knew, like, everyone appreciates what you're doing. It was really, I was trying to do like a nice talk as a VP. And what I made an offhand comment, and I said, you know what? They really love this particular feature, and if we see some more movement on that, I think you're just going to see just some delighted people. And I left it at that, and then left. And what I didn't realize was I totally torpedoed that event. Like, instead of talking about their relationships and the way they were working together, suddenly they start talking about, all right, so product owner, get in here. How do we leverage this new feature? How do we, and they were shifting things around, and they kind of spun out of control based on an offhand comment that I made. It really, I wasn't trying to change anything. I was just walking in trying to say great job. And so it was really, really bizarre.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So that's an interesting perspective, Ryan, because I know you have a lot of experience in the executive leadership space, and you're the course steward for Professional Agile Leadership Essentials course at Scrum.org. But I've been on the reverse side of that, right? I've been on the side where I've been a product owner, and I've taken that, and I've heard that, and I've been like, I have to do this. I'm getting. I'm not going to get a paycheck unless I listen to what Ryan just said there. And I'm a product owner. So guess what? My entire plan that I just had, I'm going to throw out. And that's what I'm going to do right now.
Yep.
So I feel like, much as in we talk about a lot in our book, and we're not trying to selflessly plug this. This is just our, a thing we're trying to do. Craft Brewed Agile, right? By the way, Paul's out. This is a delicious beer. I'm more than halfway done with it. I think Scrum Masters need to step up. And this is where they serve the organization, right? That executive comes in, that Ryan comes in and says that with not intention in a bad way. I'm sure you weren't saying that in a bad intentioned way, but you walk out of the room and probably don't realize what cause and effect you had by just saying that, right? So,
oh yeah, totally oblivious to the impact I had until later when I saw, oh, we reordered things and we totally tried to fix this. And I'm just like, whoa, wait a minute, guys. Totally did not mean that at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so what does a Scrum Master do then, Ryan? So you're that executive, right? I'm the product owner in that regard. You're just one of my stakeholders. Put yourself back in those shoes and think about, let's try to think about what the Scrum Master could have done. Maybe not right then and there, because I would caution to say that I don't think a Scrum Master should have stood up to that Ryan in the middle of that room and been like, "You shouldn't say that, Ryan." Like, that's probably not the appropriate thing to do. But what could you do as a Scrum Master to help, I guess, guide that kind of organizational thing moving forward? What would you do?
I think it's a one-on-one conversation much later on where we have a discussion about, hey, executive. So put me in the Scrum Master role, right? And maybe I've had one of these first, a little courage walking in the door, but pretend that's happened, and I might walk in and say, hey, what kind of impact do you think that interaction had? And the executive might say, I went in there to inspire him. I wanted to let him know that we really appreciate him. And I'm like, that's really cool. But when you called out a particular product piece, do you think that they ignored that? Or do you think they spent the rest of the event scrambling to figure out how to make you even happier? And that might lead to, I think it's a series of questions. Like, I can't, you absolutely should not. Yeah. Coaching hat, 100%. You are not a mentor in this space. You're not going to teach anybody in this space. It's totally coaching hat. And by coaching hat, and again, that's a super squishy kind of concept, I think, in our world, man. I think we need to be real clear on this. When you put on the coaching hat, you're deciding that the people that you're coaching have the answers within themselves. And so all you're doing is asking questions, sharing observations, but you're trying to get the person to find the answer within themselves and figure out ways for themselves to go forward. And it's a really hard thing to do because, Todd, we're super opinionated people. I mean, you don't sit down and write a book because you're kind of timid about what you think about things. We've given some very forceful opinions in the book about how life and Scrum can work.
Wait a second, Ryan. I'm not opinionated. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah. But you're proving my point. But,
yeah, I was trying to. Yeah. This beer is working, I think.
And so when we walk into the office with the executive, it's, look, how do you think that went? And what do you think the impact of talking about that feature? What do you think that was? And how do you think that might impact the next sprint? And what was your intention there? And, you're asking a series of questions to maybe get them to realize that, wow, I really cannot comment on things like this anymore. Or if I do, I need to caveat it with, this is not what I'm expecting. This is not what I want to see happen. I'm just really excited about the work. And I mean, the words, for whatever reason, the words from executives matter. I
They
think it's
do.
positional authority. I think it's the hire and fire power. I think it's a combination of human dynamics. And so when I'm in a Scrum Master role, I'm really coaching them to be very, very careful about the words you use. Be very, very clear about your intentions behind your statements. And that even if there is doubt, there is no doubt, right? So um, even if you think there's doubt, there is no doubt. Whatever that quote from Ronan, however it goes, I'm sure a listener will, now a viewer will leave a
Viewer,
comment
yeah.
and correcting me. But I mean, it's just, we have to be super explicit. Like, it leads into so many other topics, right? So as an executive, I'm supposed to help remove assumption. I'm supposed to help remove any things that are not, anything that isn't explicit. I'm trying to make it explicit, so that we remove this ambiguity from the way that we're working. And it's just such a difficult practice to adopt. I mean, it's why we have a 2-day class, right? We put executives through the PAL-E because we want them to realize that words matter and their role is important, and the things that they do and say and help, the way that they serve that team, can change everything.
I can't, my mind's drifting because I can't help but think of something. I can't help but think of Ryan, the executive, walks into the room. That's Palpatine, right? And there's Todd, the product owner, Darth Vader, right? Yep. To kind of circle back to our earlier conversation. But this is all really important stuff. This is all really important stuff because so many times, how many times have you walked into an organization that says, we are really struggling with the product owner role?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, and then you hear, just like, we were just on a call earlier this week with the awesome Detroit Agile user group. What do you do if your organization wants to take all business analysts and make them product owners, right? So
Yeah.
is there a Palpatine somewhere? Because that's your real product owner, right? Instead of many Darth Vaders. And this is not to insinuate that your organizations are evil. I think we're just having a little bit of a fun with our question that we came up with before. But this is really important for Scrum Masters. Like Scrum Masters, you need to attack this. This is your area of focus. If this is happening in your organization, work with my product owners, work with my organization to bring this product owner role into empowerment.
Yeah, this is the trench run on the Death Star, right? This is the Scrum Master in the X-wing taking the shot.
Just made me cough.
And dodge. No, I agree. When we see these patterns play, so people keep, this is like the value of a Scrum Master, and people get really worked up like, well, we don't have full-time Scrum Masters because we can't justify the value. There's value everywhere, right? Having a Scrum Master, a competent Scrum Master. I'm not talking about what we're seeing on the market today, where basically anyone who's gone to a 2-day class calls themselves a Scrum Master. I'm talking about a person who has embraced this role. I'm talking about a person who loves teams, who wants their teams to be wildly successful, and who has zero tolerance for anything in the way of their teams. I'm talking about that true servant leader, a competent professional Scrum Master. Like the impact they have on the organization is immense. Like they can watch these relationships. They can make sure that teams are working productively with a product owner. They can make sure a product owner understands how to fulfill their role and to do agile product management. They can make sure that every organizational impediment that's slowing down the Scrum team, that's being addressed by leadership. They can partner with leadership to help address them. Like there's so many things we can do. But yeah, it's kind of the insight we had about the book, where it's like halfway through writing the book, we realized, holy cow, the majority of these anti-patterns that we've cataloged and we're trying to solve come from a Scrum Master who's apathetic, or a Scrum Master who's given up, or a Scrum Master who is honestly who doesn't understand their role, or who isn't fulfilling it. And it cannot say this enough, that like a professional Scrum Master in your organization can solve, or at least identify, most of the things that are happening and partner with you on how to fix them.
Yeah. Brian, I've got a problem.
What's that?
My beer's empty.
Oh no, dude. Look, I have one
more sip.
And
So
so
is
that's
that
the
it?
rule of Craft Brewed Agile, right?
Yeah. When you want to tell them the rule? I think we actually just came up with the rule with 5 minutes before we started this, and you came up with it. So I feel like you should share it.
I think so Todd and I can talk about Scrum forever. We
Yeah.
can talk about Agile forever. It's not just a Scrum show. We're gonna have a beer with some Kanban people. We're gonna have a beer with some liberating structures people. We're gonna diversify this, and so you'll see some episodes coming up where we're not just gonna talk about our book. We're not just gonna talk about Scrum, but you know what? When the beer is gone, that's our time box, and so our glasses are empty. So Todd, I think pretty interesting episode 1 of Craft Brewed Agile. Again, my beer this week, Off Square Brewing, Crown Point, Indiana, 65 South. I give this Pilsner 4 out of 5 story points. How about you?
Yeah. So this is Cosmic Nod again, South County, Fawn Grove, Pennsylvania. Are we using Fibonacci? Fibonacci? Well, 4 is not Fibonacci. So
No.
I'm going to give this a 13.
Okay.
Which is probably because Ryan's a different team.
We're not going to compare.
Yeah, we're not going to compare. So I give this
No
a 13.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. And
But yeah,
I don't know what our cycle time on these beers were, but maybe we'll attack that in an up and coming episode.
How do we do?
Yeah, I would say this is an experiment, right? This is episode 1, so we absolutely want to hear if this is something that you like or if that's interesting for you.
Yep.
We are going to have episode 2 coming up here pretty soon. We've got some pretty cool guests lined up for that, maybe potentially.
Yeah, no, I think we're locked in. So I think the Liberators are going to join us in the next day or two. You know what? Let's be honest. We have a lot of free time right now.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a lot of time at home coming up, and so we're gonna make the best of it. We are going to continue to talk about these topics. I'll tell you what. If you want to leave a comment in the top or a comment in this video, or hit us up on Twitter at Ryan Ripley. Todd, what's your Twitter handle?
Todd_Miller11.
Hit us up. Let us know, and maybe we'll cover a topic that's important to you, but only within the time box of a beer.
Yeah.
Beer's gone. The show's over. Todd, thanks for doing this, man. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Same with you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Dude, I loved it. I think we'll keep doing this. And so for the viewers out there, check it out. Subscribe, hit that little bell in the YouTube channel so you know when we go live. Maybe we'll start taking some questions. We'll watch the we'll watch the chat. But for now, all right, buddy. Excellent beer. Cheers, man.
Yeah.
We'll
Cheers.
hit it again next. We'll hit it again next time.
Sounds great.